Good morning, welcome to Furry and Spoilt. Today I'm going to talk to you about, are you feeding your dog enough? I think this can be quite a tough thing to judge, and it's only years of experience with dogs that's got me to the point where I'm confident that I always know. But if you've just got a dog and you haven't had experience with dogs, this could be really hard for you to get right. And so I'm just going to tell you what I've learned over my years of owning dogs. Now I've got 3 dogs. I've had big dogs, small dogs, all sizes. And I'm just going to talk to you about how I know whether or not I'm feeding my dog enough. Right, the other thing that I do a lot is just look at my dogs and see how they're looking. This gets a little bit tricky because what you're told is that when you stand above a dog, he should have a waist. But that doesn't apply to all breeds. So Humps here, he came to us 7 months ago. When he came to us, he was really, really fat. I mean, quite scary, really, how fat he was. And so over those 7 months, I've been doing weight loss with him, and he's lost a lot of weight, an awful lot of weight. And he is getting a bit of a shape, but he still does have a lot to lose. And so I'm just really watching that by feel, but also just by looking at him and making sure that he is losing weight. Little things like their collars, like we'd had him for a while, and then after a while I noticed that I needed to tighten up his collar, so I knew he was losing weight that way as well. Now with some breed, right, this is really important. You should be able to feel a dog's ribs, but you should not be able to see them. I see a lot of dogs and they are way too thin. Way too thin. You shouldn't be able to see a dog's ribs, but you certainly should be able to feel them with a thin layer of fat between your fingers and the ribs. Now, where things get a bit tricky is, so Albert over there, my Bichon, and Harry here, who's a mix of breeds, but he's got a Bichon in him. He's also got a Basset Hound in him, and both of those breeds are naturally a very kind of barrel-y shape. So they are never going to have the hips that go in when you look from above. If you go onto, if you Google it, they'll show you diagrams of what dogs should look like from above, and it's a really handy thing. Unfortunately, even though I've got 3 dogs, I can't show you it because all of mine are breeds that are naturally very barrel-y. So with the breeds that are barrel-y, I'm completely relying on making sure that it's just looking at them that I can feel them. So if you look at Albert here, he certainly hasn't got a waist, but there's not an ounce of fat on him. And actually, not so long ago, I was a bit bothered that he was a bit too thin, and so I upped his food a little bit. And we've got Humps here who's trying to lose his weight, and Pickle, who I'm really happy with, Harry. He's a really good weight, and you can see there he's got the barrel shape, but when you feel him, that there's no fat on him. He's a good boy. The other thing you need to watch is if you've got a dog that's got curly fur, like Harry here, then looking at it isn't necessarily always going to work, because the curls could make you think he was fatter than he was, so then you are relying on feeling them. But it's a really important thing to do. But I just want to say again, you're supposed to be able to feel a dog's ribs, not see them. When a puppy is about adolescent age, so about 8 months old, they go through a really lanky stage, and then they can sometimes look a bit, you can actually see their ribs. But I see people who are saying, oh no, it's just the lanky stage, when it's not. It's actually that the puppy is actually not being fed enough for the amount of energy that they're using. So just be aware, you want to feel the ribs, but you don't want to see them. And at the other end of the scale, you don't want your dog to be fat. So, you really got to make sure that they're not too fat. Having a fat dog is just so cruel. So is having a hungry dog. Having a hungry dog is awful. But having a fat dog is really cruel. You can think you're doing a good thing by getting them well fed, but, it's really cruel. When we got Humps, he was so fat he could hardly walk. It was awful. And I just watched him suffer with bad legs and all sorts of problems. It's really bad. So if you look at Humps here, he is overweight, but we are working on it slowly, bit by bit. I didn't want to go too fast with it, but he's nice and fit and active now. Whereas when we got him, he could hardly walk. Now he trots along lovely, and it's sorted out his arthritis. Him being overweight really, really caused him a lot of problems with arthritis in his back legs. So really pleased with that. The weight loss has really helped him be able to run along. You might be able to hear the bin men. I always seem to film outside on bin day. So yeah, just really make sure your dog's not getting too fat, and have a look at those diagrams on Google. Another thing that I watch out for is begging for food. So I'm making my smoothies for the day, and so my these two always come and have a little bit of it with me. Albert doesn't. He just doesn't. But Harry will always come and just have a little bit of whatever I'm chopping up. And that's completely normal behaviour for them. And so that's just how it is. No, completely normal behaviour. But if they started to ask or beg for food a lot more that I was eating, that would make me wonder if something was wrong. I was looking after somebody's dog for them, and he was begging excessively throughout the day. And I thought, he's hungry. That is not just asking for food. He's actually hungry. Want a bit of courgette? Yeah. He's a good boy. Eats his fruit and vegetables. And so this dog, I can't bear to think of anything in being hungry. And the thought of a dog being hungry and begging for food, it does something to my insides. I can't stand it. So I gave this dog some food. And when my friend came back, I told her. And so she upped how much she was feeding him every day. And he completely stopped begging. And I thought there's a really big lesson in that. When a dog is begging for food that you're eating, it might not be that he's being naughty. And a bit of pear? Oh, yeah. It might not be that he's being naughty. It might be that he's hungry. Please bear that in mind. If your dog is begging for a lot of food that you're eating, try giving him a bit more of his own food and see if that stops the begging. And so, like I said, I just will watch that. So I know you don't like pear. You had pear yesterday. You don't like pear today. All right then. So I clearly know Humps isn't hungry. He's being all picky about what he's eating here, so he's clearly not hungry. But if he was scoffing up everything that I gave him and begging and begging and begging, you might be able to hear. At the bottom of my garden in the house, there's 2 little Yorkshire Terriers live on the neighbour's house. They're barking at the bin men. Yeah, and so if he was begging and begging for this, then I would think something was wrong and up his food. But as we are, I know everything's fine. He doesn't want his bit of pear. He makes me laugh, right? So we've had him for 7 months. And before that, he was in this country for 6 months. So we've only had him 7 months. Before that, he came from the dog meat trade in Korea. Was, really in a bad way. And it amazes me that in 7 months, I've managed to get him to a point where he's like, I don't like pear. No. I'll have a bit of courgette, but I don't like pear. And I really love that he's come from a horrific... He was used as a breeding dog for the dog meat trade, so he spent his whole life, like 6-7 years of it all. I think he's older than that, but he spent all that time in a pitch black room, locked in a cage. And he has an awful lot of behavioural problems because of it, as you would expect. But I just love it that he's coming. He's like, yeah, I my past, yes, but I don't eat pear. I just think that's absolutely great. So, yeah, that's another thing that I watch out for. Right, so now it's about 10 minutes to go until the time when I would put food into them. I can't say any of the words. And as you can see, no one's looking at me, no one's reacting. I've got another dog the other side of me and he's asleep. No one's reacting, no one's anything. If I said the word, everybody would jump up and we'd all go into the kitchen. If like some days what will happen is if we've maybe gone for an extra longer walk or they've just had a busier day, then about now they start looking at me and there'll be somebody staring at me, and before long I've got all 3 of them staring at me. But today we just did our normal walk. We've had quite an uneventful day. And so this is the reaction. And so I know that at the moment I'm feeding them all the right amount of food. And it's something that I keep an eye on. If I notice one of them at this time of day suddenly starts looking at me more and more, then I would up the amount of food they had by a little bit. But at the moment, everyone's fine. Right, it's time now, and nobody's awake yet. So I'm going to say the word. Anybody want their dinner? Oh, Harry, you want your dinner? Hums, do you want your dinner? Yeah? Albert, do you want your dinner? Oh, Albert's up. Do you want your dinner? Albert, what are you looking at? He's gone. He's getting ready to go to the kitchen for his dinner. So you can see, look, this is what I'm crocheting. I'm crocheting a blanket. And I am sure there's more dog hair in it than yarn. Anyway, are you ready for your dinner? Yeah, Harry? Do you want your dinner? So you can see they're not like starving, but they're interested. Humps? Oh yeah, we're off. We're getting up. We're getting ready. Humps, do you want your dinner? They're all waking up. They've been deeply asleep and they're all getting ready for their dinner. Yeah? Now, when we go into the kitchen, what will happen? Are you ready for your dinner? You can have your dinner, darling. When we go into the kitchen, what will happen is once I start to get, the food out, they all liven up and then they're all very keen. And then Hump's here. He does a little dance, like with his front feet. And then Harry's really good. He just waits patiently, don't you, darling, for your dinner. You're a good boy. Albert here starts crying like he's actually starving, even though he's clearly not. And it's just all normal behaviours. Like if I started to see like behaviours that were like really different, it's stuff like that. Like if there was a dog like had been waiting for like if he started crying like half an hour before it was dinner time and he was going sort of crazy now for it, sort of behaviours like that, I would start to think, oh, maybe we need to. Well, actually, I'll tell you what my first thought would always be is, has he got worms? Which I know they haven't because they all take their tablets and whatnot. But then, oh, something banged. But then after that, my thought would always be, do I need to give that dog a bit more? It's just something to keep in mind. I mean, the thing is, what I actually find is that once you get set with your food, it doesn't really change that much. Like I said, if they've had a busier day, they might be a bit more keen to eat. But if we've had say we've had a busier day, supposing we've been out on the weekend, we just do more with them at the weekend. Supposing we've done more with them, and one of them was they were sort of a bit more keen to be fed, I wouldn't feed them more food that day. They would get the same amount of food. That would all be the same. But if it kept happening like over the course of a few days or whatever, then I would be thinking, oh, mate, maybe that dog does need a bit more food. But this kind of behaviour is normal everyday behaviour. And like I said, once we get into the kitchen, they get a lot more excited, and that's normal behaviour. And that's the key to this, looking out for behaviours that are different. Are we going to go and get your dinner now, yeah? Yeah? You would go and get your dinner. All right, come on in. Right, now we're in the kitchen. Albert might start crying because he always does when I'm serving up dinner. Some dogs, if they aren't getting enough food, they might start to eat really quickly. So if I notice one of my three starting to eat quickly out of character, that would be an alarm to me that maybe they were hungry and they needed a bit more food. Now, one of my dogs, Humps over here, he eats really fast. Even though he's not hungry. He's come from Korea and he just naturally eats really, really quickly. Oh, our tortoise is out of hibernation. She's driving everyone crazy because she's just all over the place. If anyone's wondering, this is where she lives, in there. But the reason I have to put this fire guard around it, it's not to keep her in there, it's to keep the boys out because they go in there and steal her food. So let me show you how I get around the problem. Now, I've done a whole video on how to slow down a dog that's eating too fast. If your dog's eating too fast, it's incredibly important that you get it sorted out because it can cause trap wind and it can cause bloat, and that's really dangerous. Bloat's really, really dangerous. So if you haven't watched it, you know, that video might be something that's worth you watching if you don't know about it. But let me just quickly show you the plates while I'm here. So Harry here, he just eats at a normal pace. So he just has a normal dog bowl. Albert, my Bichon, he does eat a bit faster. So what I do is he has a bigger bowl with a bigger, flatter bottom, and I flatten the food down as flat as it will go. And then Humps, like I said, he eats really, really fast, and he was getting trapped wind. So I've just given him one of our plates because I couldn't find a dog bowl with a big enough base on it like this is. So I've just given him his dog plates. The reason that they're dirty is because they've eaten their breakfast. And then I don't wash my bowls during the day. Don't know if you think that's disgusting. I don't wash them during the day. I give them their breakfast. Then they eat out of the same bowl to have their dinner, and then I wash them all fresh for the next day. And so I flatten the food down really, really flat on this bowl, on this plate, so that he cannot take big chunks of it and get trapped wind. He can only eat little bits of it. And when I was making the recipe for the home cooked dog food in the last video, that's why I wanted to make it of a consistency where it could easily be mashed, because I needed to get it flat enough on this plate so that so that Humps, my Humps over there, so that he wouldn't be able to eat too fast. Right, shall we get on now and get you your dinner? Bless your hearts. They're so patient. I'm always filming them, and they're so patient. So let me get on and get them fed. So I hope that some of those tips helped you. Thank you very much for watching. Have a lovely day. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.